welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for joining us today. My name is Jen Lashansky, and I'm the Chief Career Coach and the Chief Engagement Officer at Be Social Change. It is seriously a joy to do these events because we get to collect great questions that help us just make sure that it's providing as much benefit to our community as possible. I want to just provide a quick overview. I'm going to talk a tiny bit about the market and insights about the job market, right? Like what's going on in the market, and then get to your questions. People ask so many great questions that I'm going to keep this insights bit super, super short because I want to get to the meat of what it is that each person is asking for around their careers. Really quickly, for those of you who are new, Be Social Change is an organization that's dedicated to helping you make your greatest impact. We do that through skill building workshops, networking events, and sessions like this, a variety of coaching to basically make sure that people feel that they have everything they need to succeed and achieve in their careers. So that's a little bit about what we're going to, about the organization. Now I'm going to just jump into a little bit about the job market. Not everybody here is necessarily looking for a job, but I think it's helpful to understand a little bit about the economy. We even got questions about how the economy is going to impact kind of what salaries look like, what's going to be happening for people. So most people say that the job outlook is good right now. There are 10.8 million open jobs in the United States, which is significant. It's actually down from what it used to be. 26% of job seekers say that finding a job now is easier than it was before the pandemic. And we sort of look at social impact jobs in particular, since that's a focus of Be Social Change. So there are 6,500 open jobs on idealist.org, which is a great site for nonprofit listings. And then that number has actually gone down over the course of the last 2 years pretty significantly, which isn't necessarily an indicator of anything other than idealist.org, but just to note that nonprofit jobs are hiring, quote unquote, less. Meanwhile, there are 5,000 certified B Corps worldwide. If you're curious about what a B Corp is and don't know, it's basically a business that's dedicated to a social mission. So no longer is it just that nonprofits are how people can make a great impact through their careers. There's a whole bunch of ways, whether it's the public sector, whether it's B Corps, whether it's social enterprises, corporate social responsibility, or CSR, and more. I'll get into that a little bit later, but I just wanted to give a quick kind of snapshot about where we are when it comes to the job market and when it comes to hiring and businesses. All this is to say, there are a lot of opportunities out there, and we're going to talk about not only how to get them, but some of the ways in which you can also grow within them. So I'm going to get to your questions. I'm going to stop the share here so that I can see your faces. If you have your video on, totally fine if you don't. And basically, I just want to make sure that I'm getting to every question possible. So again, if you have questions, throw them in the chat. But in the meantime, I'm going to go through the ones that you submitted prior to the event. Now, one of the main questions that we got was about gaps in employment. For some people, a gap in employment is a couple of months. For some people, a gap in employment is 15 years while they're raising a child or participating in unpaid elderly care. Now, this totally is natural. It's actually to be expected. And there are ways of working with it. In fact, LinkedIn recently did work to create like basically a sign or a way for people to demonstrate, hey, I was doing elderly care, or I took a sabbatical, that this is now totally great things that you can add to your LinkedIn profile. If you have a gap in employment that's on the shorter side, no problem. Gaps in employment are actually to be expected. One thing that you'll want to think about as you talk about it with future employers is how to express what you gained during that gap in employment, right? So if you feel maybe self-conscious about your gap in employment, just share, hey, this was a time that I spent to really learn new skills, or to dive into how I can best contribute to an organization's culture. It was time that I took for exploration and travel, which taught me how to be adaptable in any environment. There are ways of thinking about gaps in employment that are really beneficial. Now, I have a couple of moms out there who shared the particular challenge that people have when it's not just a short gap in employment, but for maybe a much longer gap. I had somebody say 15 years. So I want to talk about that. Parents and people who have been doing elderly care are definitely people who every workplace would be lucky to have. If you are a parent or if you've been doing elderly care, you probably have skills that every workplace needs, such as patience, diligence, capacity to think about others, and so forth. This is a growing awareness for organizations. And so a lot of organizations are starting to think about, how can I hire moms? How can I hire parents? How can I hire people who have been doing elderly care? Not enough organizations in my book, but many. One thing I'm going to drop in the chat here, a great resource for people who are looking to re-enter, for especially parents who are looking to re-enter the workforce, of organizations and agencies that actually represent mothers, knowing that how great and how much they can accomplish, how much they can contribute to a workplace. Check this resource out. One thing I'll say is that a lot of parents are also seeking some sort of flexibility, right? I think all of us are seeking flexibility in our work schedules. If you're not, that's awesome, rock on, but I think most of us are looking for some sort of flexibility. And so one thing to consider is, where can you find people or organizations that also value flexibility? A lot of women-led workspaces tend to be more flexible. There's an understanding of that. A lot of people are also looking for part-time work or bookkeepers or like different fields of work that are not necessarily hour specific. You know, you don't need to be online from 9 to 5. There's a whole bunch of organizations that are dedicated to sharing sharing part-time or remote positions. And I'll be sure to share some of those in the follow-up email to all the attendees. So look out for that. I hope that explains how to talk about a gap in employment. And again, the main key is share what you learned. Share the skills that you gained in being able to care for someone else or being able to travel or XYZ. Another question that we had was about, can I change career direction? Vicki, you were the one who asked, you know, I want to change career direction. Can I do this? And hands down, 100%, you absolutely can change career direction. There is no age at which point you say, I've been doing the same thing for so long that I can't change. Absolutely, you can change. There's a couple of things to be mindful of. Number one is that absolutely you need to think about this as a long-term transition. It's not going to just come overnight. And the reason is that as much as possible, it's important that you experiment and try out the other types of roles that you might be interested in. So it's not just a matter of like, hey, I want to change careers. You know, I think I know what I want. If you're going to change careers, be certain, get actual hands-on experience. And you can do that through volunteer opportunities. You can do that through part-time gigs. You can do that through interviewing and networking with a lot of people in that sector. And that's going to take some time, and that's okay. The other thing, if you're going to change career direction, is you absolutely need to think about the language of whatever career you're trying to go to. So again, once you've tried things out and had good conversations with people and gotten to know it, part of the intention behind doing that is that you're actually trying to learn the language of how people speak. People speak differently in the nonprofit sector than they do in the for-profit sector. People speak differently in the public sector than they do in just about any other sector as well. There's different terminology. And the key is that you need to be able to translate what you've done in the sector where you've historically worked into vocabulary that the sector where you want to work is going to understand, right? So one thing that nonprofits often, for a quick example, one thing nonprofits talk about is strategic planning. This is like a common phrase among nonprofits. And in the for-profit space, more and more it's being called like innovation and growth strategies, right? Like there's different terminology. So being able to think about or talk to people and say, hey, you know, this has been my expertise. What would this look like in a nonprofit? What do you see as this being? That's important. So absolutely make a career transition. Go for it. Just understand that there will be an investment of time to learn a new language and to prototype. We always call it rapid prototyping, what it is that you might be interested in. Now, we also got a question about career changes, like how do I make a career change and not just start from the bottom, right? Now, this is really, really significant because a lot of people want to they've reached really high pinnacles in certain fields, but then they realize that it's not the industry or area that they want to be working in. So they want to make a transition, but they don't want to go to an entry-level position. You do not have to go to an entry-level position. The key is to get really good at translating your skills. I keep using this term like vocabulary and translation because that actually is what's needed in order to make a successful career change. So can you get really good at doing that? And bonus points if you can get volunteer experience. Now, volunteer experience does not mean that you have to be working for a nonprofit, but there are great nonprofit volunteer sites such as Catch a Fire, Taproot Foundation Plus, if you're looking for experience in the nonprofit sector. But say that's not the sector that you're seeking to change a career into. You need to find organizations that you're excited about, that you want to rapid prototype, whether or not this is a place that you want a career with. Reach out and see what you can do with them. I'm currently helping one of the coachees that I work with who knows the exact organization she wants to work for so bad. It's a for-profit company. She really is eager to work with them. And so she's been building a relationship with people within the organization for a couple of months. And now she's actually having a meeting with them this week to talk about how can I volunteer my skills? I have a lot to offer. I want to give. I could even help set up potential partnerships, things like that. I could use all of the passion that I have for this area to do something for you. And you don't even have to pay me at first. It'll be a short-term pro bono project. And I want to include the thought short term because your labor should not always be done for free. But it will be important. Gwen, great question. Rapid prototyping is the idea of testing out something before fully committing to it. So you can think about if you're making a career change, before you say, you know what, I think I really want to be a teacher. I think that that's going to be really important to me. Try it out or talk to teachers and get a full sense of what it is before you go to grad school and spend money doing grad school, only to find yourself in a classroom not enjoying it, right? Rapid prototyping is the idea of getting experience with as minimal of like a threshold to cross as possible. So you're not putting in money for grad school. You're not, totally quitting everything else and going all in before you actually have a sense of what it's like. And that's really important because a lot of people will say, I think this is what I'm going to love. And then the day-to-day is a different reality. So try it out first. That's rapid prototyping. I hope that question about entry level makes sense, but if you can have volunteer experience that makes clear that you can contribute to an organization or that just puts it on your resume and it's something that you can actually like highlight and move up from a volunteer section, that's going to really help you out in the long run. That's going to make it so that you can definitely invest, invest in a higher level position. Again, because you'll also have more fluency with what it is that the organization or the field is asking. One question that we had was from people, there's a lot of people out there, which is really exciting, who are trying to start their own consultancies, who are trying to do more freelancing work, which is awesome. This is definitely one of the benefits of the what the pandemic has done to the work culture is that more and more people feel confident to make their own schedules and to make their own organizations. So we had questions about how do I figure out the right products and services to offer? And I want to sort of walk everyone through a quick process here, partially because this is also beneficial if you're applying for a job or looking for work. Whenever you are looking to build an organization or to build opportunities for yourself, let's put it as build opportunities. So that could be an organization or a job search. You first and foremost want to start with what is the problem I'm seeking to address. Job searchers, a lot of times the problem that you're seeking to address is like, how can I contribute to this organization needs help. They need somebody who can fulfill the purpose of a position that I can fill, right? Who can fill the purpose of, let's say, a fundraiser. They just need someone to bring in funds. For entrepreneurs, the question is, what is a problem that I care about or that I see around me that I know I can address, right? So this is a fundamental kind of pillar of human-centered design. Check out human-centered design, or, oh my God, I'm blanking on the name. There's an organization called, I'll send it out in the follow-up email, but their whole thing is get out of the building, interview people, and rapid lean startup is what it's called. Get out of the building, interview people, find out what their problem actually is. A lot of people, for example, in parts of the country, this is a quick tangent. A lot of people were like coming in and being like, I'm going to build better broadband access, because I think that that's going to get this community out of economic poverty. And they went to the community and the community was like, we don't really need broadband. I can just access everything I need to on my cell phone. What we actually need is X, Y, Z. So find out from people who you want to be working with or you want to be serving what their problem is, and then reverse engineer specific products or services. How can I use my skills, my strengths, my talents in order to address this problem? That's your product and services. And also for job seekers, that's what should go on your resume. How can I use my skills and strengths to fulfill this position's requirements? I hope that makes sense. Another question that came to mind that somebody brought up was about networking. This is a really good one, which is what's the best way to use my network to find clients? Job seekers, this also applies to you. Networking is not an optional career change strategy. Applying for jobs online is 20% effective. 80% of opportunities come through your network. So you tell me where you should be spending the majority of your time if you're job searching. For that reason, your network is something that's really important to cultivate. One thing all of us forget to do is simply ask. We have to ask our network. Now, for people who are launching a business, that might be as simple as sending out an email to your top tier supporters. And for people who are looking for jobs, you can do the same thing. Your top tier supporters are like your network champions, the people who will go to bat for you, the people who will help make connections for you and who think highly of you enough to share your work. Send those folks an email and say, hey, I'm doing this. Would love your support. If you can think of somebody specifically to connect me with, I'd really appreciate it. What that means too, and this is true for both job searchers and consultants to be, so you have to be really specific on what it is that you actually want. If you send out an email that's like, hey, I'm looking for general coaching opportunities, send folks my way. Everybody needs a coach. I don't even know what your coaching specialty is. Who do you want to work with? Like, who is the best people to connect you to? And what is it that you're offering? These are ways that you can actually do people a service of being more specific and making better connections for you, right? If I get those emails, I don't know what to do with them. I kind of leave them unopened. So that specificity is really, really going to help you. It should also be succinct. No 5-paragraph emails, please. When I get those from people, I literally send it back to them and I was like, hey, can you just synopsize what you're saying here in 3 sentences? Because you're asking me to do a lot of labor to try and figure out what's happening in 5 paragraphs. So get crystal clear and clear enough that you can say it in 3 sentences. I hope that helps. Vicki, you had a question about best way to find a job during the holiday season. This is a really good one. And this is something that a couple of people asked around, what is the job market like between November and January? So it's a bit industry specific, but also there's a general trend. We're in late October. October is a really good hiring season. Even early November is a good hiring season. Once we start hitting the holidays at the end of November and towards, throughout December, nonprofits basically go into all hands on deck fundraising efforts. A quarter of the funds for nonprofits are raised in the month of December, and that requires a whole lot of staff time. So nonprofits go into like full fundraising mode, not doing a whole lot of hiring. Some might, but it's going to be rare. Also, if they are doing hiring, it might be part-time in order to support some of their efforts, like database administrators or people to come in and do mailers. All of those concepts apply. So it could be short-term hiring during that time, but not much long-term things. For businesses, and especially social enterprises who have products, the holidays are a busy sales time. So again, it might be one of those all hands on deck time, but there's a little bit more laxness. Businesses with services tend to be more quiet. It might be a good time for them to be doing hiring. So you can sort of think about, if you're looking during this time, businesses with services is a good area of focus. One thought I have is that people always say, so I shouldn't do anything in December, and that's the opposite of true. Just because these sectors are busy doesn't mean that people won't set aside time to network and converse with you. So this is actually really good foundation laying time. go ahead and set up as many meetings as you can, get on the phone, get on Zoom chats, and really talk with people, because it's going to be a great way that come January, you can say, hey, I've spoken with this person and this person and this person in your organization, and it seems like it could be a really great fit. Towards the end of January and into all of February, great hiring time. So really consider between now and the end of January, great foundation laying time. And if you need a job before then again, focus on service related areas, larger corporations, areas or organizations that don't have a strong mandate in December, which means that they're not trying to fundraise or they're not trying to ship 1 million products or deliver those products too. I hope that makes sense. Somebody asked about translating volunteer experience into paid experiences. They specifically asked about board experiences, so here's what I'm going to say. Paid board experiences usually come from investing some sort of equity. Nonprofits usually do not have paid boards, and in fact, they're kind of disadvantaged if they do on things like Charity Navigator, GuideStar, which is now Candid. Nonprofits should not have paid board experiences, so don't go ahead and look for those. If you are looking for paid board experiences, it usually means putting in equity. That said, volunteer experiences are, in general, separate from boards, are incredibly important for working in social impact organizations. This is because specifically volunteer experience helps you gain the language of wherever it is you're trying to work, gives you connections, and it also shows proof that you're able to do some of the things that you might be applying for. A lot of people forget to even include a volunteer section in their resume or on their LinkedIn profiles. Include that section and in fact, make it as built out as the rest of your work experience. There's no reason to just put like volunteer for organization, 2019 to 2022. Actually build out what you did in your resume. Quick resume tip for everybody. If your resume is saying, I managed, XYZ and did XYZ, it's not going to be as effective as framing the accomplishments or achievements of what you did. Every work experience and volunteer experience bullet in your resume should be framed as far as what those actions achieved and then the tasks that you had to achieve them, right? So created a team culture that retained all of the employees I oversaw by managing 6 full-time workers with empathy and hands-on guidance or coaching. That's a lot more compelling than manage 6 full-time professionals, right? People want to hear about the outcomes, so always be sure to include those. I'm just going to run through my notes here. Somebody asked about how do I communicate the benefits of a 4-day work week schedule? Now, I think that person is here. If you can share in the chat a little bit of what you meant by that. Do you mean like when I'm applying for a job or to my current managers? That would be great. How I took that question is, how can you advocate for a 4-day work week when you're applying to a new job? Something that happens during any job search is that people's confidence takes a hit. There's no doubt about it. Job searches are not meant to be great bolstering experiences. Rejection is natural. It happens to everyone. And almost never is it because of you. It's usually because they're hiring internally or they reshifted the position or XYZ. So don't take it personally as much as you can. I know that sometimes you just got more in that job that you really wanted, but it's not about you. Because job searches take such a hit on your confidence, a lot of people don't realize when they come to negotiating time that they're actually in a position of power. If somebody's gotten to the point where they say, yeah, I think we want to spend this time with you on our team. I always think about it as like a relationship. Somebody's like, we want to marry you, right? We want you on our team. Then you're actually in a position of power. And that's a great time to think about, what salary do I want? What are the benefits that I want? Be aware in negotiating that salary is only a part of the picture, that your benefits are a big one. And that I've helped, I think, 5 people negotiate 4-day work weeks for themselves, including major senior leadership positions. It's not out of the question. So consider that if that is more important to you than salary, consider that as one of the main things that you can be negotiating for. That's absolutely fine. And there's a lot of ways of communicating the benefits. I mean, there's a whole ton of research coming out right now about what it does for people, that it's more productive, that they're happier at work, blah, blah, blah. So definitely just do some of that research. Somebody asked, how should I think about the value for the money I spend on career coaching? This is a great question. A lot of people invest in career coaching and expect that it's going to mean that within a month they're going to have a job. That's not always the case. The average time that it takes for people to get a job in the United States is 5 months. That's just what it is. Again, if I'm freaking you out right now, please don't be freaked out. There's a lot of people, that's average, which means that there's a lot of people for whom it goes a lot faster. If you're thinking about investing in career coaching, you have to think about, what are the things that I can do for myself and where do I need support? If the things you can do for yourself are craft get really clear on what it is you want, craft great application materials like a resume and a cover letter and a LinkedIn profile, an elevator pitch or story. If you can do all of this yourself, then you're not going to get a whole ton of value out of career coaching. But if you need support and you need accountability in order to keep going with those things, then career coaching, I think, is a good investment. One thing I often recommend for people is that job searches are kind of isolating, right? It can be really lonely. Feels like you're the only one in the world going through it, and you're probably the only one in the world who's ever been rejected from a job. I know that I'm saying that facetiously, but a lot of people kind of feel that in the moment, and that's totally natural. So sometimes group career coaching can also be really beneficial because it gives people that chance to build community, to get support, and to realize that they're not alone in the process. So that's another value that's harder to necessarily quantify, but it's good. Again, one of the main things I want to say about that is think of an investment in career coaching as giving you the foundation and the strategies and what you need in order to be able to make a successful job search. If you can do that on your own, fantastic. But if you want support, it's a good investment. Somebody asked, I just want to learn about more income opportunities. There are 1,000 job boards out there, literally 1,000, more than 1,000. So get really clear on what it is that you want to do as far as income generation. Be Social Change teaches a workshop called Discovering Your Purpose that helps you kind of narrow down and hopefully get greater clarity. Get really clear on what it is that you want to do, and then find job boards that are specific to that. That's, if a simple Google search will definitely bring about those income opportunities. The other thing that I would say, and this is perhaps a more effective job search, is that instead of always going to jobs boards, which I don't know about you all, but a lot of people I talk to spend a lot of time doom scrolling through jobs boards, like, there are so many jobs out there. Can I do any of them? Is this bringing me any joy? Instead of doing that, actually just get clear on who it is that you want to work for. Can you create a list of 10 to 15 organizations that you would be excited about working for? Network into them, see if they're hiring, and pursue it that way. That is almost always a better strategy. So definitely, if you're looking for income opportunities, get clear on who it is that you want to work for, where it is that you want to work, and why. I mean, for a lot of people, it's going to be based on culture, income range, location, social mission, etc. So get clear to what's most important to you, which can also be done through values, activities, and just some introspective space. Rachel, I'm going to go to your question in the chat here because it's relevant to what we were just talking about. How do you negotiate a salary for a job you might be overqualified for, or a role that is difficult to find a salary range for online? This is a really, really good question. Okay, so a couple of thoughts here. When it comes to negotiating a salary for a job that you're overqualified for, one, if the organization has listed the salary range in the position description and it's significantly below what it is that you want, I'm not talking like 10K, I'm talking like 20K plus, then don't apply. They're not going to have the budget for it. They're trying to be transparent. It's not worth your time. If you're overqualified for a role, one, why are you applying? Is it what you really, really want? Two, how can you think about, if I know that I'm overqualified, if I could do this in 4 days a week, is that something I want to negotiate? Do I want to think about like, what else can this role do for me? Can I work remotely? Can I do more speaking opportunities? Will they pay for professional development for me? So think about the benefits for roles that you might be overqualified for. But again, I have a rule with everybody that I work with, which is no BS jobs. Don't apply to jobs that you're not interested in, that you're overqualified for, or that just feel easy, right? And what I mean by easy is like, I know I could get this job, so I should go for it, even if you won't necessarily be happy there. Now, for a role that it's difficult to find a salary range for online, Indeed came up with a salary calculator that's pretty damn good. I'll include that again in the follow-up email. I have a lot of things to do. So if I, for any reason, forget any of these things in the follow-up email, feel free to reach out to me. But the Indeed salary calculator is pretty thorough. If it's a role that you really can't find any salary range for online, ask them earlier on in the interview range, like, I'm really curious what a role like this would look like financially. It's not the only deciding factor for me, but it's something that is important. And I just want to be clear from the get-go for both of us. And once you get that information, sit with it and think about it, right? It's totally fine for them to come forward with what the salary is before you say what your salary range expectations are. You can even say in an interview, hey, I'm not even clear on what a role like this normally pays. I can tell you what I've made in the past and what I'd like to be making in my next role, but I'd like to get a sense from you of what the salary range is. Totally fine, very natural. Somebody said, as a consultant getting paid by the hour, how do you calculate your rate? Ooh, okay, Yvonne, this is a really in-depth question. It can be a really in-depth question. I'm going to give you like the 50,000 foot overview. One, research. Find out what generally consultants in your area get paid per the hour, what it is that you feel you're worth. And then also do your own math. This is something that everybody should do, which is sit down with a pen and paper, look at your monthly expenses, look at your cost of living, look at all of these factors and figure out what it is that you would need to make per hour for your time to be justified. And then cut that in half, because not everybody is going to have every hour of their week filled as a consultant, right? What do you need to be making per hour? And then for how many hours a week? So if I think that if realistically I'm going to get 10 hours a week of consulting work each week, then what do I need that hourly range to be in order for my needs to be met? And start there when you're growing a business. That's really important. Think about from the very first get-go, you're not going to have 40 hours a week filled. So what is it that you need to charge in order to get there? And then make sure that that's in line with what other people might be charging. It's also fine to ask other consultants who work in your area, what do you charge for services? That's totally a fine question. You might find some people who get prickly at that, but it's not an unreasonable thing to ask. Asuna asks, in relation to this, what's the best way to estimate the value of my time when self-employed or providing consulting? So along what I just said, Asuna, okay, quick soapbox moment. Women in this call, women identifying people, and especially women of culture, have been conditioned to think that our time should be given away. This is in a pervasive thought in our society, right? That women's time is something that shouldn't necessarily be financially compensated, and that whatever it is that you're charging is probably more than you should be making. This is a horrible issue. It's really, really real. And my encouragement to you is to understand the value of your own time. For most women that I work with, you would be shocked at what their opening rate is. It's like way below the rates of anything that I think they should be making. So we have a general rule of like doubling it from the get-go. Whatever you feel like quote unquote comfortable charging, double it from the get-go, as long as, again, it's like within the general range of what it is that you should be charging. A lot of women too feel that they shouldn't charge until they have a deep level of expertise under their belt. And I'm sorry, but you already have expertise. Skills are highly translatable. And I think that's something that a lot of people lose sight of. Your skills are translatable. Even if you're getting started, your capacity to communicate, to think critically, to launch a business, these are all things that are going to serve your clients. You're not as new as you think you are. So don't let yourself get away with like, I'm going to charge this at the beginning. Quick asterisk mark there, which is that for a lot of consultants and coaches, one thing that you can do to successfully grow your business is to give away a couple of sessions at the beginning. right, is to say, hey, I am seeking to grow my experience and how good I am at this. I'm looking for 1 or 2 pro bono clients, or I'm going to do half off for the first 3 months that I'm working. That's really fine as long as it's being done in order to grow your business and not because you don't see the value of your work. I hope that's clear. Let me know if that answered the question, Yvonne, and I'm happy to dive into that more. What's the best? Vicky asked, how about dealing with the reality of ageism implying? Oh, Vicky, we're going to go into ageism. The soapbox is still here and it's still alive. How do you overcome it when being told you're overqualified is a code for too old? Okay, Vicky, this is one of the most pervasive problems that doesn't get any type of light. With most things in the workplace and even in our daily culture, anything that ends in ism is looked down upon. Like racism, you can't get away, you shouldn't ever get away with being racist. You shouldn't ever get away with any of this. But being ageist is totally something that our culture accepts. You can make jokes about people being old left and right in ways that are almost nobody bats an eye at. It's super, super messed up. That also translates into the job space and into companies. Ageism is rampant. There are organizations out there that are specifically dedicated to helping overcome the barriers of ageism in the workplace. Some of them are CoGenerate, which I'll include again in the follow-up email, as well as a couple of others. And so look for those organizations and networks because they'll be good champions in your corner. There's also a whole lot of other people who are maybe of the same age or looking in the same way that you are, who can provide advice and insights. Again, a community is really important in a job search, so don't be hesitant to find that community. When you're being told that you're overqualified, one, the question is, are you overqualified? Are you applying to jobs that are beneath you, or is it simply coded language for you're really old, I'm not sure that you can do this job, or we want someone who's going to be around for 20 years, which by the way, isn't a thing that people do anymore. All of this is real. The question that you need to ask is, one, can you apply to more senior leadership positions? Can you pivot your skills? And where can you look for organizations that already have a track record of hiring people who are not 20 years old, right? If you go to a company's staff page and everyone is in their 20s and 30s, probably not going to be a really great culture for someone who's not in their 20s and 30s. So definitely go forward and check out the check out the staff page. See if they've hired somebody who's in their 50s plus. And that should give you a pretty good indication from the get-go. It's almost like a litmus test for the organizations that you're asking. I am going to keep going for a while here. If you need to jump off, that's totally fine. This session is being recorded, so you'll get it in the follow-up email. But this directly translates to another question that somebody asked, which was, how do I interview a potential employer, right? It's not just that they're interviewing you, but you need to ask the questions that help you gain assurance that they're where you want to spend your time. So there's a couple of categories to think about when it comes to interviewing your employer. One of the most important categories is culture and management, because this is the reason that 98% of people leave their jobs is because of poor culture or poor management. So ask them the questions that get to the heart of that. Things like, what was a time when you took employee feedback and created an organizational change based on that feedback? What does professional development for managers look like within this organization? How do you support your team in difficult moments? What does flexibility look like? These are all fine questions. The thing that you have to be careful of is asking them in a way that doesn't sound like I need all of these things, or if it is, that's fine, ask them, do that. If that's something you need, then, and they're not meeting it, you have every right to know early on in an interview process. But just be clear on what it is that you want to know about the culture and ask that, right? So professional development might be a category, or flexibility, or thinking about management styles, how often can I interface with leadership about the ideas that I see within my role, or what does that currently look like for the team members that you have? to interface with leadership about what's coming up for them. Definitely ask about culture and management. Other categories that you might want to think about are developing a personal relationship with whoever you're interviewing. Hey, what do you love about your job? What would you change? What is the thing that you're most excited about for the organization? What, if anything, do you feel nervous about? Having that kind of like direct connection with whoever is interviewing you is only going to help you in the interview process, but it also gives you greater insights than like the HR person who's wearing their like, I have to represent this organization really well hat, right? It gives you that more straightforward access. You can also interview them about, the logistics of the business, get to know the business as much as possible. But those are some categories to think about as far as getting to know your future employer. I want to talk quickly that in interviews, a lot of times flags will come up and it's like, ooh, that was like a weird answer, or this gave me kind of nerves about things. One thing I've noticed is that there's a lot of people who throw red flags the moment they hear something that they don't like. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but I'm saying as much as possible, there's no such thing as an organization or a role out there that's going to be 100% perfect 100% of the time. So discern what feels like a red flag, what feels like a yellow flag, what feels like a pink flag, like almost red, and what's just something to be conscious of. This is my encouragement to you as you go through the interview process. That something that's bad might not be a red flag, but check in with your gut, check in with like your sense of how that went, and see what it feels like to you. Okay, I had a question about resume approaches for non-straightforward careers. The great news is that there's no such thing as a straightforward career anymore. We all have composite careers. Super rare to find somebody who's been in the same role for more than 5 years, even more rare for 10 years, even more for 20. It's totally fine to have a non-straightforward career. What you need to do is think about your resume as telling the narrative about your career. And you can do that in a really strong way with 2 simple additions that I kind of require of anybody I work with, because I think that they do this effectively. Your work experience is usually just like, the bullets again of what you've accomplished and how you accomplish them, the skills that you put into place, or, the responsibilities that you held to get there. But you can add at the very beginning a mission section or a summary. A lot of people call it summary. I work with social impact people, so I always encourage them to call it mission because it's shared language with most of the places they're applying. In your mission section, tell your story in no more than 3 sentences. Again, 3 sentences max. If you can tell it in 2, even better. 1, you get 7 gold stars. So think about how you're telling the story of like, I'm a career professional who is incredibly dedicated to helping improve equity and access in all of the various facets of our society. And maybe that helps explain why you worked in education and now you're working in food services and now you're working in somewhere else, right? Create that narrative arc for them in a couple of sentences. Then include also, and you can call this whatever you want to, but I call it talents and capabilities section. Include a section that highlights the core skills that are true throughout your career or that are most important to where you're trying to apply to next. So you can think about it as like relationship building. And you might want to say a little bit about relationship building, communication, all these things. And this gives people a sense of who you are without trying to make sense of your narrative arc in your resume. This is really important. And all I have to say is like, a resume is one tool, but you also have LinkedIn and cover letters. And cover letters have never been so important. Organizations are hiring for culture fits. They're hiring because culture fits or culture adds is a smarter organization. They're hiring because they really want to get to know a person. Work is more personal than ever. So use your cover letter to also explain that arc, that narrative arc. If you can get really good at storytelling, then you will find success in hiring. As a career coach, I read well over 1,000 cover letters at this point, and there are 4 that I remember because they were incredibly effective at telling a story. The story was 2 sentences, maybe 3, maybe 4, but they told them in a way that was compelling enough. It's something that I can go into more detail before, but it would take too long. So storytelling is really key in a cover letter or LinkedIn as far as being able to tell what it is that you can do for someone or share your narrative arc. There's a question, please talk about how to deal with interview questions around topics that are illegal and inappropriate to ask. Whew, red flag. If somebody is asking in an interview questions that are illegal or inappropriate to ask about your age, about whether or not you're trying to get pregnant anytime soon, this stuff, totally illegal. Organizations should not be doing that. And you can let them know, I'm sorry, this is a question that is not appropriate to be asking, and I'm uncomfortable that you've asked it. See what they say. I mean, it doesn't seem like a good thing if this is how somebody's going about the interview process. If it's a job that you really, really want, and you see that this is something completely separate, like this is just HR being HR and not actually the division or department that you'd be working in, you can let whoever your future manager know. Say, hey, one thing that came up in the interview I had with HR was, they were asking me about my age, or, fill in the blank. And that made me, I just wanted to raise that as a point, because I really want to work here. I love this organization, but HR shouldn't be asking these questions. And see how your manager responds to it. It's a great litmus test for them. Joyce, I'm sorry if that happened to you, because that sucks. That's not okay. I want to make sure to get to just a few more questions. And if there's any other, LinkedIn. This is another good question. How do I best use my LinkedIn? LinkedIn is a place to cultivate your personal brand. If I say personal brand and you kind of shudder, don't worry, I understand a lot of people have that reaction. But your personal brand is not about you. It's not about bragging. It's about letting people know how you can help solve their problem, to go back to that earlier situation that we talked about. So use your LinkedIn effectively. Be Social Change teaches an entire workshop all about personal branding. I think we have one coming up in November. Check that out. Personal branding, again, just like networking, is not really an optional part of a job search. It's less important than networking. I hate to say that, because it's a little bit subjective. It's a little bit less important than networking, but it's still hugely important. And it's one of the main ways that you can help yourself in a career search, is by having a really clear, definitive personal brand that lets people know right off the bat, when they've come to your LinkedIn profile, that you can help them solve the problem they've been seeking to address. So for that reason, your LinkedIn profile should have a couple of specific kind of hallmarks or touch points to help people. We always use this phrase, burn as few calories as possible in understanding how it is that you can solve their problem. So you want to make sure that all of your application materials help people burn as few calories as possible in an understanding why you're the right fit for their role, or for whatever it might be. I have a LinkedIn audit that I use for my career coachees, and I will share that with all of you. It's very simple. It's like the very beginning of like a LinkedIn revision process, but I'll include that in the follow-up email as well. I hope that's clear. If you have a really strong question that I'm not answering, please message me and I will make sure to get to it. I'm trying to get to all of the questions, and I think I'm almost there. We had a question about career choices for someone with HR experience. You can do a whole lot of things. The point isn't what you were doing before. The point is how you translate it to what you want to do next. So just get really clear and specific on that, learn the vocabulary, try and gain experience. That will help you. We had someone else ask, how do I become a business coach? Which is really interesting. And I would like to take that up offline. It's one of those things where you actually have to have expertise and so forth. So if you have that question, please reach out to let me know. We had one important question, and then I'm going to share a couple of follow-up resources. Somebody asked how to ensure that I'm growing my skills in my next role. This is really important. Ask about professional development upfront. See if there's a professional development. Find out what skills. A great interview question is, what skills do you see as necessary for someone entering this role? And what skills do you kind of see grow for people who grow within this role? What would you expect are skills that come with somebody who's doing this? Interesting question. Professional development is a great way to assess this. And also, if you can, interview somebody who works there, see what their experience is with skills development. Also, you can find organizations that teach workshops and skill building exercises extracurricularly, like Be Social Change. There's lots of organizations out there dedicated to each field, each industry, and so forth. So there's also free resources, and even bringing those to an interview and saying, something, I'm really dedicated to skill development, and I know, I'm going to keep going to these workshops like at Be Social Change or at, what the APA hosts online, et cetera. And see, that's great for that person who might be learning about a new skill. And it shows your dedication to skill development. What to be mindful of when seeking new opportunities. I kind of talked about that red flag, pink flag, yellow flag, white flag situation, but something that you want to be mindful of is the culture. Again, culture and management is responsible for 98% of the reasons that people will leave their jobs. So really, it's not something to kind of mess around with or treat optionally. And finally, become a member, besocialchange.com membership. If you're interested in joining the member mixers, or if you want to join any of our events for free and access our library of like 50 plus skill building workshops, become a member and you'll have access to all of that. It's $79 a year. It's a really good investment in your professional development and help us build the movement. Definitely feel free to reach out to us, as well as friends who might be interested in this content or in social impact work in general. I really appreciate all of you being here. I can't thank you enough. If you want to share one word before you go about how you're doing now at the end of the session, that would be great, just to help us feel out if this was valuable or not. That's great. In the meantime, I wish you a wonderful rest of the day. Look out for a follow-up email from me soon with all of the resources that we mentioned. I'm impressed by how much thank you, Yvonne. I feel like I've been speed talking. So if anybody has questions, please don't hesitate to reach out more specifically. Thank you all. I really, really appreciate your time, and happy growing your career, whatever that may look like. Thanks all. Be well.